Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most fun and action-packed animated sequels ever made. Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted. Now, if you haven't seen this movie yet, first of all, what are you even doing with your life? And second of all, don't worry, because we're going to break down absolutely everything for you today. And if you have seen it, well, buckle up, because we're going to go through every single detail, every joke, every wild moment, and all the things you might have missed the first time around. This is going to be a long one, so grab your popcorn, get comfortable, and let's get into it. So let's start from the very beginning. What is this movie actually about? The basic premise of Madagascar 3. Europe's Most Wanted is pretty straightforward on the surface, but it's actually a lot more layered than people give it credit for. The story picks up right where Madagascar 2, Escape to Africa left off. 2. Our beloved group of zoo animals, Alex the lion, Marty the zebra, Gloria the hippo, and Melman the giraffe, are still stuck in Africa, far away from their home at the Central Park Zoo in New York City. They've been waiting for the penguins to come back and get them, but as we all know, the penguins have their own agenda. So Alex and the gang decide to take matters into their own hands and travel to Monte Carlo to find the penguins and finally make their way back to New York. Simple enough plan, right? Well, of course, nothing ever goes according to plan for these guys, and what follows is one of the most chaotic, colorful, and genuinely hilarious adventures you'll ever see in an animated film. Now, speaking of the main characters, let's talk about who we're dealing with here. The core group is still the same lovable bunch we fell in love with back in the first movie. Alex the lion, voiced by Ben Stiller, is still the self-appointed leader of the group, trying to keep everyone together, while also desperately wanting to get back to his old life of performing in the zoo. There's something really interesting about Alex in this third movie, because you start to see him genuinely question what he actually wants. Is the zoo really home? Is performing what he truly loves? Or is it just what he's always known? These are surprisingly deep questions for an animated movie aimed at kids, and the film handles them with a lot of heart. Then there's Marty the zebra, voiced by Chris Rock, who is still the enthusiastic, energetic, glass-half-full kind of guy who finds excitement in literally everything. Marty is the emotional heart of the group in a lot of ways, and Chris Rock brings so much natural charisma to the role that you can't help but smile every time Marty is on screen. Gloria the hippo, voiced by Jada Pinkett Smith, is still the confident, strong, and nurturing presence in the group. She doesn't get quite as much to do in this movie as some of the other characters, but her warmth and personality shine through in every scene she's in. And then there's Melman the giraffe, voiced by David Schwimmer, who has come a long way from being the hypochondriac nervous wreck of the first movie. By the third film, Melman has grown considerably as a character. He's more confident, more capable, and his relationship with Gloria is one of the sweetest subplots in the entire trilogy. These four are the backbone of the story, and their friendship and dynamic is what makes everything work. But of course, we can't talk about the main characters without bringing up the scene stealers. And oh boy, does this movie have some incredible scene stealers. The penguins, Skipper, Kowalski, Rico, and Private, are back and better than ever. If you thought they were funny in the first two movies, wait until you see what they get up to in Europe. These guys have been living their absolute best lives in Monte Carlo, playing the casino, driving sports cars, and just generally doing whatever they want. Skipper, voiced by Tom McGrath, is still the hilariously over-the-top military-style leader who takes every situation with deadly seriousness, which of course makes everything funnier. The penguins are the kind of characters who could carry their own movie, and actually did, with their own TV series and spin-off film. So having them be such a big part of Madagascar 3 is a genuine treat. And then there are King Julien and his crew. Julien himself, voiced by Sacha Baron Cohen, Maurice, voiced by Cedric the Entertainer, and Mort, voiced by Andy Richter. King Julien is, as always, completely unhinged in the best possible way. He's self-absorbed, ridiculous, and somehow always ends up in the middle of everything. In this movie, Julien develops a rather unexpected romance with Sonia the bear, and honestly, it's one of the funniest and most surprisingly sweet subplots in the whole film. There's something absolutely perfect about King Julien falling head over heels for a bear, and Sacha Baron Cohen plays the whole thing with such committed absurdity that you can't help but love every second of it. Now, one of the most important new characters introduced in this movie is Vitaly the Tiger, voiced by Bryan Cranston. Yes, that Bryan Cranston, the same guy who played Walter White in Breaking Bad. And let me tell you, hearing Bryan Cranston voice a Russian tiger who used to be able to jump through impossibly small hoops is one of those casting choices that sounds insane on paper, but works absolutely perfectly in execution. Vitaly is introduced as a gruff, serious, kind of intimidating figure who has lost his passion for performing. He used to be the greatest circus performer in the world, capable of jumping through a hoop the size of a tiny ring, but after a catastrophic failure that we learn about through a really well-done flashback sequence, he gave up trying anything daring and became bitter and closed off. His arc throughout the movie is about rediscovering his passion and courage, and it's genuinely moving. Bryan Cranston brings such gravitas to the role that you completely buy into Vitaly's journey, even though he's a cartoon tiger. Then there's Gia the Jaguar, voiced by Jessica Chastain. Gia is confident, graceful, athletic, and has this wonderful idealistic belief in what circus performance can be. She talks about circus as something magical, something that brings people together and creates wonder, and her enthusiasm is infectious. She becomes a sort of mentor and inspiration to Alex, and their relationship develops in a really organic and charming way throughout the film. Jessica Chastain brings a lot of warmth and elegance to the character, and Gia ends up being one of the most memorable new additions to the franchise. And we absolutely cannot forget Stefano the Sea Lion, voiced by Martin Short. Oh man, Stefano. This character is pure joy. He's enthusiastic, dramatic, slightly ridiculous, and has this wonderfully over-the-top Italian energy that makes every single scene he's in funnier. Martin Short was clearly having the time of his life voicing this character, and that energy comes through in every line. Stefano is the kind of character who provides comic relief, but also has genuine heart. He truly believes in the circus and in his friends, and his loyalty and optimism are actually kind of touching when you think about it. But if we're talking about characters who absolutely steal the entire movie, we have to talk about Captain Chantel DuBois, voiced by Frances McDormand. DuBois is the villain of Madagascar 3, and she is one of the greatest animated villains in recent memory. She's an animal control officer in Monte Carlo who becomes obsessed with capturing Alex the lion because she has this bizarre hobby of collecting animal heads as trophies. Though the film keeps everything family-friendly, so don't worry, there's nothing graphic here at all. What makes DuBois so memorable is the sheer unhinged energy that Frances McDormand brings to the role. This woman is absolutely feral in the best possible way. She's incredibly capable, almost supernaturally so. She's relentless. She has this magnificent theatrical quality to everything she does, and she's genuinely funny in a way that great villains often are. The scene where she rallies her animal control officers by singing Non, je ne regrette rien by Edith Piaf is one of the most absurdly committed villain moments in any animated film, and it's hilarious every single time. DuBois's pursuit of Alex and the gang drives the plot forward in a really energetic way. Every time our heroes think they've escaped, there she is again, somehow more determined and more unhinged than before. She's like a cartoon version of a relentless action movie antagonist, and the film leans into that completely. There's a chase sequence in Monte Carlo near the beginning of the film that is genuinely one of the most impressive and creative action sequences in any animated movie from that era. The animation is fluid, the scale is enormous, the jokes come fast and furious, and DuBois is at the center of all of it, being absolutely magnificent. So after the chaos in Monte Carlo, how do our heroes end up in a circus? Well, this is where the plot gets really fun. After their escape from DuBois and her team, Alex and the gang end up stowing away on a train, and that train turns out to belong to the Zaragoza Circus. This is the moment where the movie shifts gears and becomes something really special. The circus animals they meet, Vitali, Gia, Stefano, and others including Sonia the bear, are a ragtag group who have fallen on hard times. They're struggling, their acts are outdated, and they're on the verge of being bought out by a circus promoter named Martini, who wants to sell them to a zoo. When Alex finds out about this, he does what any desperate lion trying to get back to New York would do. He pretends that he and his friends are professional circus animals from America, hoping to use the circus as cover to get across Europe and eventually back home. This lie, of course, creates a whole new set of complications, because now they actually have to perform in a circus, and they have absolutely no idea what they're doing. The sequence where they try to figure out circus acts is wonderfully funny, but it also leads to something really meaningful. Alex and his friends start to actually love performing. They discover that the circus is about more than just tricks and acts. It's about creativity, passion, and connecting with an audience. And this realization ties directly into Alex's deeper question about what he really wants and what truly makes him happy. The way the film uses the circus setting is genuinely inspired. It's not just a backdrop. The circus becomes a metaphor for found family, for discovering your true calling, and for the difference between performing because you have to and performing because you love it. Alex grew up performing in the Central Park Zoo, but was that really performing? Was it really what he was meant to do? The circus represents something different: freedom, creativity, genuine connection with the audience. And watching Alex and his friends fall in love with circus life while also desperately wanting to get home creates this wonderful tension at the heart of the movie. Now let's talk about the production side of things, because this film didn't just happen by accident. Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, was directed by Eric Darnell and Conrad Vernon, with Tom McGrath joining as co-director. Eric Darnell has been with the Madagascar franchise from the very beginning. He directed the first movie and the second one as well, so he has a deep understanding of these characters and what makes them tick. Conrad Vernon is known for his work on Shrek 2, among other things, and he brings a slightly more anarchic, anything-goes sensibility to the film that perfectly complements the European setting and the circus storyline. The combination of their directing styles gives the movie a really nice balance between heart and absurdity. The screenplay was written by Eric Darnell and Noah Baumbach, which is one of those collaborations that sounds surprising but makes a lot of sense when you watch the film. Noah Baumbach is known primarily for his indie dramas and character studies, films like The Squid and The Whale and Greenberg, so having him work on a Madagascar movie might seem like an odd choice. But actually, Baumbach's strength is in writing characters who feel genuine and emotionally real, and that's exactly what elevates Madagascar 3 above being just a standard animated sequel. The characters feel like they have real desires and real conflicts, not just plot-mandated motivations. Baumbach helped bring a human quality to these animal characters that makes their journey genuinely resonant. The film was produced by DreamWorks Animation and distributed by Paramount Pictures. It was released in June 2012, and the production had been in development for several years before that. One of the interesting things about the making of Madagascar 3 is that the creative team really wanted to push the visual style of the film further than the previous two installments. The first Madagascar had a certain look, and the second one refined it. But the third movie was where DreamWorks really went for it in terms of color, lighting, and overall visual ambition. The European setting, Monte Carlo, Rome, London, and other locations, gave the animators an incredible canvas to work with, and they took full advantage of it. Speaking of the visual style, this is something that really needs to be talked about in depth, because Madagascar 3 is genuinely one of the most visually inventive animated films of its era. The color palette is extraordinary. It's bright and vibrant and saturated in ways that feel almost overwhelming at first. But then you realize that the visual style perfectly matches the energy and tone of the story. When the movie moves into the circus sequences, the animation becomes almost psychedelic in its creativity. The big circus performance sequence near the end of the film, set to Katy Perry's Firework, is a genuinely breathtaking piece of animation. It's colorful, it's dynamic, it's imaginative, and it perfectly captures the feeling of joy and wonder that the circus is supposed to represent in the story. Kids love it for the spectacle, and adults who are paying attention will notice how technically impressive the whole thing is. The lighting in particular is worth calling out. The animators used light in really interesting ways throughout the film. The warm glow of Monte Carlo at night, the dramatic lighting of the circus tent, the way colors shift and change during performance sequences. It's not quite up there with the lighting work that Pixar was doing at the time, but for DreamWorks, it represented a real step forward, and the results are genuinely beautiful in places. The cinematography, and yes, animated films absolutely have cinematography, even if it's virtual, is dynamic and exciting throughout. The chase sequence in Monte Carlo is staged and shot like a live-action film, with sweeping camera movements, dramatic perspective shifts, and a real sense of kinetic energy. The directors clearly had a lot of fun playing with the virtual camera, and the result is a film that feels genuinely cinematic rather than just a pretty cartoon. Now, the film was released in theaters and was a massive commercial success. Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, grossed over $746 million worldwide at the box office, making it the highest-grossing film in the Madagascar franchise and one of the most successful animated films of 2012. That's a pretty remarkable achievement, especially for a third installment in a franchise. Usually by the time you get to the third movie, audiences are starting to lose interest, but Madagascar 3 actually performed better than its predecessors. What does that tell you? It tells you that the filmmakers did something right. They didn't just repeat what worked before, they pushed the characters further, they raised the stakes, they added genuinely great new characters, and they delivered something that felt fresh and exciting rather than like a tired retread. The critical reception was also surprisingly positive for an animated sequel. Review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes shows the film with a score that reflects general approval from critics, with many noting that it's the best film in the trilogy. Critics praised the voice performances, particularly Frances McDormand as DuBois and Bryan Cranston as Vitaly, as well as the visual style, the humor, and the surprising emotional depth. Some critics noted that the plot is fairly simple, and that the film prioritizes set pieces and gags over storytelling complexity. But for the most part, The consensus was that Madagascar 3 is a genuinely entertaining, visually spectacular, and surprisingly heartfelt animated film. So, what are the strong points? Let's break them down. First and foremost, the humor. Madagascar 3 is genuinely funny. Not just animated movie funny, where you smile politely, but actually, genuinely, laugh out loud funny. The jokes work on multiple levels, which is the hallmark of great family entertainment. There are physical gags and slapstick moments that kids will love. There are more sophisticated jokes that adults will appreciate, and there are character-based humor moments that work because we know and love these characters after 3 movies. The penguins, King Julien and DuBois, are comedic gold throughout the film, and even the main characters get their share of great comedic moments. Second strong point, the new characters. As we've already discussed, Vitaly, Gia, and Stefano are all wonderful additions to the franchise. They don't feel like throwaway new characters introduced just to give the plot something to work with. They feel like genuine, fully realized characters with their own arcs and personalities. Vitaly's redemption arc is probably the most developed of the 3, but Gia and Stefano both have enough personality and presence that you genuinely care about what happens to them. And DuBois, of course, is just phenomenal. She's the kind of villain who makes the movie better just by being in it. Third strong point, the visual ambition. We've talked about this already, but it bears repeating. Madagascar 3 is a genuinely beautiful film to look at. The animation is fluid and expressive, the color work is extraordinary, and the big set pieces are staged with real creativity and flair. The circus sequence at the end is worth the price of admission alone. It's one of those rare animated sequences that genuinely takes your breath away. Fourth strong point, the emotional core. For all its zaniness and spectacle, Madagascar 3 has a genuine heart. The themes of finding your true calling, of the difference between obligation and passion, of what makes a place truly feel like home. These are themes that resonate with both kids and adults. Alex's journey in this film is genuinely meaningful, and the film earns its emotional moments rather than just forcing them in. Now, what about the weak points? Because every film has them, and it's worth being honest. The main criticism you'll hear about Madagascar 3 is that the plot is thin and somewhat predictable. Once you understand the basic setup, animals join circus, have to impress promoter, learn to love performing, eventually everything works out, you can pretty much see where the story is going. The film is more interested in delivering great moments and funny gags than in surprising you with complex storytelling. And while that's a perfectly valid approach to a family animated film, it does mean that the narrative can feel a bit episodic and loose at times. Another common criticism is that some characters get less to do than others. Gloria, in particular, feels somewhat underutilized in this third film. She's there, she's funny, she's warm, but compared to Alex, Marty, and Melman, her character arc feels a bit thin. Similarly, some of the side characters in the circus troupe beyond the main 3 new additions are pretty much just background characters without any real development. There's also the question of whether the film takes any real risk. It's polished and professional and clearly made by people who know exactly what they're doing, but it sometimes feels like it's playing it safe, giving audiences what they expect and want, rather than genuinely challenging them or doing something unexpected. Compared to some of the more ambitious animated films of the same period, Madagascar 3 can feel a little comfortable in its own formula. But here's the thing, and this is important. A film doesn't have to reinvent the wheel to be genuinely good and genuinely enjoyable. Madagascar 3. Europe's Most Wanted knows exactly what it wants to be, and it executes that vision with tremendous skill, creativity, and passion. It's funny, it's gorgeous, it's entertaining from start to finish. It has great characters and some truly brilliant comedic performances, and it has more emotional depth than you might expect from a movie about a lion who misses the zoo. Is it the most complex animated film ever made? No. Is it the most narratively ambitious? Absolutely not. But is it a genuinely great time? Without question, yes. Let's get back to the story and dig into some of the specific plot details that make this film so memorable. The Monte Carlo sequence that opens the film is, as we mentioned, absolutely incredible from an animation standpoint. But let's talk about what actually happens there narratively, because it sets up everything that follows. Alex and the gang arrive in Monte Carlo looking for the penguins, and they find them at a casino. Of course they do. The penguins and King Julien have basically been living like absolute royalty, which is both hilarious and completely in character for all of them. The casino sequence gives us some great comedy, particularly around Julienne's antics and the penguins' bizarre lifestyle choices. But then DuBois enters the picture, and everything escalates immediately. DuBois is alerted to the presence of wild animals in Monte Carlo, and she launches this absolutely insane pursuit that tears through the streets and rooftops and practically every landmark in the city. The chase sequence is a masterclass in animated action. It's fast, it's inventive, it's full of great visual gags, and it establishes DuBois as a genuine threat while also making her completely hilarious. There's this wonderful quality to DuBois where she's genuinely dangerous and relentless, but also so over-the-top and theatrical that she becomes one of the funniest characters in the movie. Frances McDormand clearly understood exactly what this role needed and delivered it perfectly. The escape from Monte Carlo leads directly to the train, and the introduction of the circus animals is handled really well. There's an initial wariness and tension between our heroes and the circus animals. Vitaly, in particular, is deeply suspicious of them, and his gruff Russian energy creates a great comedic contrast with Alex's eager American optimism. The dynamic between Vitaly and Alex is one of the more interesting relationships in the film because they start from a place of conflict and mistrust and have to find their way to mutual respect and genuine friendship. It's a classic story structure, but it works because both characters feel real and their journey feels earned. The moment when Alex claims that he and his friends are professional circus performers from America is one of the great desperate improvisation moments in animated comedy. You can see the wheels turning in Alex's head as he makes up this elaborate story, and Ben Stiller plays it perfectly. That mixture of desperation and commitment to the bit that makes the scene so funny. And then, of course, Marty, Gloria, and Melman have to go along with this story, which sets up a great running gag throughout the first act of the circus section. One of the things the film does really well is show how Alex and his friends, despite having no actual circus training, turn out to be naturally suited to circus performance in ways that surprise even them. Alex's natural athleticism and showmanship as a lion make him genuinely good at performing once he finds the right creative framework. The scene where Gia introduces him to the concept of Trapeze Americano, which, as Stefano helpfully points out, Alex made up, is a great moment of improvisation and creativity leading to something genuinely magical. There's a real sense that these characters discover something about themselves through the circus experience that they couldn't have found any other way. The training montages in the film are genuinely entertaining and often hilarious. Watching the penguins and King Julien try to learn circus acts is comedy gold, and even the more emotional moments, like Vitaly rediscovering his old passion for jumping through hoops, are handled with a lightness of touch that keeps the film moving at a great pace. The film never lingers too long in any one place, which helps it avoid the pacing problems that can bog down animated sequels. Now, let's talk about the Vitaly backstory, because it's one of the more substantive pieces of character development in the film, and it's worth examining in detail. We learn through a flashback that Vitaly used to be the most spectacular circus performer of his generation, a tiger who could leap through a hoop barely wider than his own body, as a result of coating himself in olive oil to slip through. This is wonderfully absurd as a premise, but the film plays it straight emotionally, which makes it work. After his great failure, his fur caught fire during a performance and he lost his nerve, Vitaly gave up on being daring and became the bitter, closed-off character we meet at the beginning of the film. He shrunk the hoops he jumped through to a size where there was no risk of failure, and in doing so, he lost everything that made his performance special. The message here is pretty clear but not preachy. Greatness requires risk, and a life lived in fear of failure is not really living at all. When Alex helps Vitaly rediscover his passion by suggesting a simple solution, hairspray instead of olive oil so there's no fire risk, it's a lovely moment of problem solving that also represents something deeper. Sometimes all you need to rediscover your courage is someone who believes in you and a new way of looking at the problem. The scene where Vitaly actually attempts the hoop jump again is genuinely exciting, and Bryan Cranston's vocal performance in that moment is really impressive. You can hear the fear and the hope and the determination all at once, which is quite an achievement in an animated film. Gia's character is also worth examining more closely because she represents something really important thematically. Gia is a true believer in the circus. She talks about it with this reverent, almost spiritual quality, describing it as something that creates wonder and connects people. Her vision of the circus is completely at odds with the gimmick-heavy, sensation-driven approach that the promoter Martini wants to push them toward. When Alex and his friends help transform the circus into something genuinely magical and creative, it's really Gia's vision that they're realizing. She sees what the circus could be before any of them do, and her belief in that vision is what inspires everyone around her. The relationship that develops between Alex and Gia is really charming. It's not overplayed or overly romantic. The film keeps things light and appropriate for the family audience. But there's a genuine warmth and connection between them that feels earned. Gia challenges Alex to think differently about performance and about what he wants from his life, and he rises to that challenge. Their scenes together have a lovely energy, and Jessica Chastain and Ben Stiller play off each other really well in terms of vocal chemistry. The King Julien and Sonia romance is a completely different animal, no pun intended, but it works in its own wonderfully ridiculous way. Sonia is a bear who doesn't speak, which makes her relationship with the extremely verbose King Julien all the more funny. Julien is completely head over heels for her in the most dramatic, over-the-top way possible, and watching him try to court this large, intimidating, motorcycle-riding bear is one of the most absurdly funny subplots in the entire film. Sacha Baron Cohen is brilliant in these scenes. Julien's complete sincerity makes everything funnier, because he's never winking at the camera or acknowledging the absurdity of the situation. He genuinely believes this is a great romance, and somehow that makes it genuinely touching. Let's talk a bit more about the film's setting and how effectively the European backdrop is used. Monte Carlo, Rome, and London all get to shine in their own way, and the film's art department clearly did their research on European aesthetics. The architecture, the color palettes, the general atmosphere of each location feels appropriately distinct. Monte Carlo has that glamorous, high-stakes, slightly garish quality that fits perfectly with both the casino opening and DuBois's theatrical personality. The train journey through Europe has a wonderful sense of movement and transition, perfectly capturing the feeling of being on the road and heading somewhere new. And then there's the big climax in New York, which brings the story full circle in a really satisfying way. After all their adventures across Europe, our heroes finally make it back to the Central Park Zoo, which is what Alex has been dreaming of throughout the entire film. And then comes one of the most genuinely poignant moments in the trilogy. Alex and his friends are back in the zoo, which is supposed to be home, and it doesn't feel right anymore. The zoo feels small and constraining and wrong after everything they've experienced. This is a beautifully handled moment in the film. The realization that home isn't always the place you came from, but the people, or animals, you're with, and the life you're living. The resolution to this emotional conflict is handled with a lot of warmth. The circus comes to New York, and our heroes rejoin their circus family, choosing the life they've discovered over the life they grew up with. It's a genuinely moving conclusion, and it works because the film has done the work throughout to make us believe in both Alex's longing for the zoo and his growing love for circus life. The choice feels real because both options feel real and meaningful. Now, DuBois has been following them all the way from Europe, because of course she's relentless like that. The climax involves her showing up in New York just as everything is coming together, and the final confrontation with her is handled with the same mix of action and comedy that characterizes the whole film. The circus animals rally together to deal with DuBois, and seeing all of them work together as a team is a really satisfying payoff to the relationships built throughout the movie. There's a great sense of community and solidarity in that final act. These animals from different backgrounds and different parts of the world have become a family, and they protect each other like family. The resolution for DuBois is funny and appropriate. She ends up being shipped off somewhere far away with the other animal control officers, handled in a way that's completely harmless and family-friendly. It's a satisfying end for the villain without being mean-spirited, which fits the tone of the film perfectly. Let's get into some of the musical elements of the film because they deserve serious attention. The soundtrack of Madagascar 3 is fantastic and plays a huge role in making the film work as well as it does. Beyond the already mentioned Non je ne regrette rien and firework, the film has a really great sense of musical energy throughout. The original score by Hans Zimmer and Lorne Balfe is lively and expressive, matching the energy of each scene perfectly. There are playful circus-themed cues, dramatic action sequences, and genuinely touching quieter moments, and the score handles all of them with skill. But the song choices throughout the film are really what people remember. The Afro circus polka mashup that becomes a recurring joke in the film is one of those earworms that will live in your brain forever, whether you want it to or not. It started as an internet meme even before the film came out, based on a clip from a trailer. And by the time the movie was released, audiences were already somewhat obsessed with it. The fact that the film leans into this joke and makes it a recurring element shows a sense of humor and self-awareness that's really appealing. And then there's the firework sequence. Katy Perry's Firework plays during the big final circus performance, and the combination of the song's anthemic, triumphant energy with the extraordinary animation of the performance is genuinely spectacular. It's the kind of sequence that makes you feel good simply by watching it. The colors, the movement, the music, the sense of joy and achievement all combine into something that hits you right in the heart. Even if you're a fully grown adult sitting down to watch a cartoon with your kids, there's a very good chance you'll find yourself grinning like an idiot during this sequence. And that's not a bad thing at all. That's the movie doing exactly what great entertainment is supposed to do. Now let's talk a little bit about the film's themes in more depth, because there's actually quite a bit to dig into here. On the surface, Madagascar 3 is a colorful, funny adventure movie about animals trying to get home. But underneath that surface, there are some really interesting ideas being explored. The central theme is about authenticity versus performance, or more precisely, about finding the kind of performance that is authentic. Alex performs in the zoo because it's what he's always done. But is that who he really is? The circus represents something different, a space where creativity and self-expression are valued, where performance isn't just about giving the audience what they expect, but about genuinely surprising them and moving them. There's also a strong theme about community and belonging. Throughout the trilogy, our heroes have been searching for home, and the conclusion of Madagascar 3 suggests that home isn't a place, but a community. The people and animals who support you and believe in you and choose to be in your life. This is a theme that resonates deeply with both children and adults because it speaks to something fundamental about the human experience. We all want to belong somewhere, and the film suggests that belonging comes from connection rather than from geography. The theme of courage and passion is also explored through Vitali's arc. Vitali had passion, but lost his courage. Alex has courage, but has been performing passionlessly for years in the zoo. The film suggests that both are necessary. Passion without courage leads to timidity and eventually to giving up, while courage without passion leads to going through the motions. The ideal is the combination of both, and both characters help each other find that combination through their developing friendship. There's even something interesting going on with the theme of reinvention and second chances, which plays out through multiple characters. Vitali gets a second chance to rediscover his passion. The circus gets a second chance to become something great. DuBois, in her own twisted way, is pursuing her own version of reinvention, though the film makes it clear that her particular version of passion and determination is being directed toward the wrong ends. The theme of reinvention gives the film a hopeful quality that makes it genuinely feel good without being saccharine. Now, something that's worth discussing is how Madagascar 3 handles its comedy versus its emotional moments. One of the hardest things to do in family entertainment is to shift tonal gears effectively, to be genuinely funny and then genuinely moving without either register undermining the other. Madagascar 3 is actually quite good at this. The film establishes its comedic voice early and maintains it throughout, but it also knows when to slow down and let a quiet, emotional moment breathe. The scene where Alex looks out at the zoo and realizes it doesn't feel like home anymore is a perfect example. The film could have rushed through this moment or played it for laughs, but instead it gives Alex and the audience a moment to genuinely feel the weight of that realization. It's a small moment in the grand scheme of the movie, but it's handled with real sensitivity. Similarly, Vitali's backstory flashback is played more or less straight. There's not a lot of comedy in it, because the film respects the emotional truth of what happened to Vitali and what he lost. By treating this moment seriously, the film earns the emotional payoff when Vitali successfully jumps through the hoop again. If the backstory had been played for laughs, the success wouldn't have felt meaningful. The film understands that comedy and emotion are not opposites but partners, and it uses them together really effectively. The voice cast deserves another round of appreciation here because the vocal performances in Madagascar 3 are genuinely excellent across the board. Ben Stiller brings real depth and sincerity to Alex, which is something that's easy to overlook because the character is also often very funny. Chris Rock's natural charisma makes Marty feel like the most enthusiastic and lovable zebra in the world. Jada Pinkett Smith is warm and grounded as Gloria. David Schwimmer brings both comedy and genuine feeling to Melman. These are performances that have been refined over 3 films, and it shows. These actors know their characters intimately and bring them to life with a comfort and ease that makes everything feel natural. Bryan Cranston as Vitali is a revelation. He brings such weight and seriousness to the role that you completely forget you're watching a cartoon tiger. The accent is just right, not over the top or caricatured, but genuinely expressive. The emotional moments land because Cranston commits to them completely. It's the kind of voice performance that reminds you what great acting can do even in an animated film. Jessica Chastain brings elegance and warmth to Gia, and Martin Short is absolutely delightful as Stefano. His Italian-inflected enthusiasm is perfectly calibrated, funny without being annoying, and he gives Stefano a genuine sweetness that makes the character really likable. And then there's Sacha Baron Cohen as King Julien, who continues to be one of the great comedic performances in any animated franchise. Julien is an absurd character, but Sacha Baron Cohen plays him with such commitment and such precise comic timing that every single line lands. He understands Julien completely. The delusions of grandeur, the complete lack of self-awareness, the genuine warmth underneath all the ridiculousness. And he delivers a performance that is consistently, reliably hilarious throughout all 3 films. One aspect of the film that doesn't get enough attention is the supporting circus cast. Beyond Vitali, Gia, and Stefano, there are a bunch of other circus animals who get their moments, including a group of sea lions, some hippos, and various other creatures. They don't get much character development, but they add to the sense of community and variety in the circus sequences, and some of them get nice visual comedy moments that add to the overall fun. Let's also take a moment to appreciate the film's sense of geography and adventure. Part of what makes Madagascar 3 so enjoyable is the genuine sense that these characters are on a real adventure through a real part of the world. The film captures something of the romance of traveling through Europe, the variety of cultures, the beauty of the landscapes, the sense that anything might happen around the next corner. Of course, it's all wildly exaggerated and cartoonish, but there's a real spirit of adventure and discovery that runs through the film and makes it feel genuinely exciting to watch. The train sequences in particular have this wonderful quality. Watching our heroes travel through different European countries on this circus train, with the landscape changing outside the windows, gives the film a sense of movement and progression that keeps the energy up even during quieter character moments. It's a classic storytelling device, the journey itself as a metaphor for the characters' internal journeys, but it's executed with real skill and visual flair. Now, one thing that often comes up when people discuss Madagascar 3 is how it compares to its predecessors. The general consensus, which we've touched on, is that it's the strongest film in the trilogy. The first Madagascar is charming and entertaining, and it has the advantage of novelty. These characters and their dynamic were fresh and surprising when we first met them. But the storytelling is a bit uneven, and the film sometimes struggles to find the right balance between character and spectacle. Madagascar 2. Escape. 2. Africa is a solid sequel that develops the characters further and does some interesting things with Alex's backstory and his relationship with his father, but it also has some of the same issues with narrative focus. Madagascar 3, by contrast, feels like the creative team finally found the perfect formula. The characters are developed enough that we genuinely care about them, but the story is fresh enough, new characters, new setting, new themes, that it doesn't feel like a retread. The villain is the best in the franchise by a considerable margin. The visual ambition is higher than either previous film. And the emotional moments, particularly the ending, hit harder because we've had 3 films to invest in these characters and their journey. It's also worth noting that Madagascar 3 benefits from being the culmination of a trilogy rather than just another sequel. There's a sense of completeness to it. The characters have come full circle. They've found what they were looking for, and the story reaches a genuinely satisfying conclusion. If this had been a middle chapter with another sequel planned, it might have felt less satisfying. But as a conclusion to the trilogy, it works beautifully. So, should you watch Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted? The answer is an enthusiastic yes, but let's be specific about who it's for and what you should expect. If you're watching with kids, this is basically perfect family entertainment. It's funny, colorful, exciting, and full of characters that kids will absolutely love. The humor works on multiple levels, so adults won't be bored, and the emotional moments are genuine enough to resonate with grown-ups, even in the middle of all the cartoon chaos. The film is completely appropriate for all ages. There's nothing scary or disturbing, and the whole thing has a wonderful warmth and positivity to it that makes it a genuinely enjoyable experience for families. If you're an adult watching without kids, maybe you loved these movies growing up, or you're just in the mood for something fun and uncomplicated, Madagascar 3 holds up really well. It's genuinely funny. The voice performances are excellent, the animation is spectacular in places, and it has enough thematic depth to give you something to chew on if you're looking for it. It's not going to challenge you the way a Pixar film might, but it's a genuinely well-made, genuinely entertaining animated movie that delivers consistent enjoyment from beginning to end. If you're coming to the trilogy fresh and wondering whether to watch all 3 films, yes, you should, and you should watch them in order. The characters develop meaningfully across all 3 films, and the payoff of Madagascar 3's ending hits harder if you've been with these characters from the beginning. The first 2 movies are both worth watching in their own right, even if the third is the strongest, and the journey from Central Park Zoo to Africa to Europe makes for a wonderfully satisfying arc when experienced as a complete trilogy. Something we haven't talked much about yet is the film's humor in detail, and since the comedy is such a central part of the Madagascar 3 experience, it's worth really digging into. The film operates on several comedic registers simultaneously, which is a sign of sophisticated comic writing. At the most basic level, there's slapstick and visual humor, characters falling, being chased, physical gags that work because the animation is so expressive and fluid. This is the comedy that works most immediately for younger viewers, and the film executes it brilliantly. The chase sequences are full of great visual gags, the circus training sequences have some wonderful physical comedy, and there are scattered physical jokes throughout that land with consistent reliability. Then there's the character-based humor, which works because we know these characters so well by this point. The humor that comes from Melman's lingering anxiety despite his character growth, or from Marty's incurable enthusiasm, or from Alex's slightly too serious approach to everything. This is comedy that requires investment in the characters and rewards long-term fans of the franchise. It's the kind of humor that gets funnier as you watch the films multiple times, because you start to anticipate these character beats and enjoy them on a deeper level. The King Julian humor deserves its own category, because it operates on a completely different level from everything else. Julian's comedy comes from a place of almost surreal self-absorption and total lack of self-awareness. He says and does things that are so disconnected from normal social behavior that they become funny simply by how confidently and sincerely he commits to them. The humor around his romance with Sonia the bear is particularly good. Julian doesn't seem to notice or care that Sonia is a completely different species who doesn't communicate in the same way he does. He simply declares his love and pursues it with total commitment. It's absurdist comedy executed with perfect confidence. DuBois's comedy is different again. It comes from the combination of genuine menace and total theatrical excess. There's something deeply funny about a villain who takes herself so seriously that everything she does becomes a performance. The way she rallies her team, the way she pursues our heroes through Monte Carlo, the way she sings Edith Piaf with such committed passion, it's all hilarious precisely because DuBois never winks at the audience. She genuinely believes she is the greatest animal control officer in the world, and that sincere belief in her own magnificence is what makes her so funny. Frances McDormand understood this completely and never played a single moment for laughs directly. She played it straight, and the comedy took care of itself. The Penguins, as always, are comedic gold. Their brand of humor has been refined through the TV series and the spin-off film, as well as the 3 Madagascar movies, and by Madagascar 3, it's operating at peak efficiency. Skipper's military seriousness applied to completely inappropriate situations, Kowalski's pseudo-scientific explanations, Rico's unpredictable randomness, and Private's earnest goodness. These 4 characters are a perfectly calibrated comedic machine, and every scene they're in delivers. There's a particular running gag involving Skipper's relationship with a Danish woman named Charlene that is brilliantly handled, mentioned enough to be a running joke, but never over-explained or overdone. One more thing worth talking about is the film's pacing, which is genuinely impressive. Madagascar 3 runs at about 93 minutes, and it doesn't waste a single one of them. The film moves at a high-energy pace throughout, but it's not so relentless that it becomes exhausting. There are natural moments of rest and reflection, character scenes, quieter emotional moments that give the audience time to breathe before the next big set piece. This kind of pacing is actually quite difficult to achieve in animation, where the temptation is either to pile on action sequences without pause or to include too many slow character moments that kill the momentum. Madagascar 3 finds the right balance really effectively, and the result is a film that feels breezy and fun without feeling shallow or rushed. The film's structure is also worth noting. It follows a fairly classic 3-act structure, but within that structure it has some interesting rhythms. The Monte Carlo sequence works as a kind of extended prologue that establishes the stakes and introduces DuBois. The circus section that follows is the long second act, where most of the character development happens and the real story of the film unfolds. And then the New York climax brings everything together in a satisfying and somewhat surprising way. Surprising because the emotional resolution, Alex choosing the circus over the zoo, isn't quite what you might have expected at the beginning of the movie. The film earns this ending by doing the work throughout the second act to make Alex's love for the circus feel real and genuine. Let's also talk briefly about the film's legacy and cultural impact. Madagascar 3 came out in 2012, and in the years since, it's held up really well in terms of cultural memory. The Afro Circus polka mashup became a genuine internet phenomenon and is still referenced and shared today. DuBois has become one of those animated villains who gets cited frequently in discussions of great animated antagonists. The fireworks sequence remains one of those genuinely transcendent animated moments that people remember long after they've forgotten other details of the film. The film also cemented the Madagascar franchise as one of DreamWorks Animation's most successful and beloved properties. While the franchise didn't continue with a 4th theatrical film, though there were various spin-offs in the Penguins of Madagascar movie, Madagascar 3 stands as a genuinely strong conclusion to the main trilogy, a film that honored the characters and their journey while delivering something fresh and exciting enough to stand on its own merits. There's something genuinely admirable about how the filmmakers approached this third installment. They could have played it safe and just given audiences more of the same. More Africa, more wacky animal adventures, more of the familiar formula. Instead, they completely changed the setting, introduced a whole new set of characters and themes, pushed the visual style further than ever before, and delivered what is genuinely the strongest film in the trilogy. That kind of creative ambition in a franchise sequel is rare, and it should be celebrated. The DreamWorks animation style has evolved significantly since the first Madagascar in 2005, and Madagascar 3 represents a high watermark for the studio in terms of both technical achievement and creative vision. The characters are more expressive, the environments are more detailed and atmospheric, the camera work is more dynamic, and the overall visual ambition is higher than anything the studio had done before in this franchise. When you watch the first Madagascar and then watch Madagascar 3 back to back, the growth in visual sophistication is genuinely striking. One thing that sometimes gets overlooked in discussions of animated films is the technical achievement involved in creating characters that are expressive enough to carry genuine emotional moments. When Vitali's eyes fill with emotion during his backstory flashback, or when Alex looks at the zoo and feels that something is missing, or when Gia looks at Alex with warmth and belief, these are emotionally effective moments that depend on the animators being able to convey subtle emotion through a character's face and body language. Madagascar 3 is full of these moments, and the animation team deserves enormous credit for making them work as well as they do. The character animation in particular is outstanding. Each character moves in a way that reflects their personality, their history, and their current emotional state. Vitali moves with a kind of controlled tension that reflects both his physical capability and his emotional guardedness. Gia has a fluid, graceful quality that reflects her training as a circus acrobat. Stefano has this bouncy, enthusiastic energy that perfectly matches his personality. These are not just character designs. They're fully realized performances expressed through movement and gesture, and the animators clearly thought deeply about each character and how their inner life would express itself physically. So as we wrap things up, and yes, we've been at this for a while, which is completely appropriate for a film this rich, let's summarize what Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted is, and why it deserves your time and attention. It's a film that takes its characters seriously while never losing its sense of fun. It's a film that looks absolutely extraordinary and uses its visual medium to its fullest potential. It's a film with a genuinely great villain, some of the best new characters in any animated sequel, and a really satisfying emotional resolution to a character journey that spans 3 films. It's funny in smart ways and in silly ways and in character ways, and it manages to be all of those things simultaneously without any of them undermining the others. It's the best film in the Madagascar trilogy, and it's one of the stronger animated films of its era. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Seriously, stop whatever you're doing after this video and find it. If you have seen it, maybe it's time for a rewatch. There's a very good chance you'll notice things you didn't catch the first time, and there's an equally good chance that the circus performance finale will still give you that warm, happy feeling that great entertainment creates. That's what movies like this are for, to remind us that joy is possible, that passion and courage can lead to incredible things, and that the best home is wherever the people you love happen to be. And on that note, that's a wrap for today's deep dive into Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted. If you made it this far, seriously, you're an absolute legend. Drop a comment below telling me your favorite moment from the film. Mine is honestly still DuBois singing Edith Piaf, because Frances McDormand is an absolute genius. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it useful or entertaining, and I'll catch you next time with another deep dive into something worth talking about. See you then. Actually, wait. Before we really close this out, I realize there are still some things we haven't fully explored, and honestly, it would be a crime to let this conversation end without going deeper into a few more details that make Madagascar 3 such a special film. So consider this the bonus round, the extended cut, the director's commentary track that nobody asked for, but everybody secretly wanted. Let's talk about something that doesn't get nearly enough attention when people discuss this movie, the world building. Now, I know what you're thinking. I know what? World building? In a Madagascar movie? But hear me out, because this is actually really interesting. The world of Madagascar has always operated on this wonderfully consistent internal logic where animals are capable of extraordinary things. Driving cars, speaking multiple languages, operating casinos, running circuses. But the human characters around them are largely oblivious or simply don't pay much attention. It's a comic conceit that the films established in the very first movie and have maintained throughout the trilogy, and Madagascar 3 takes it to its absolute limits in the best possible way. Think about the Monte Carlo casino sequence. There are penguins playing at the tables, a lemur king gambling away enormous amounts of money, and the human casino staff are just going with it. Nobody is particularly alarmed. This is exactly the kind of heightened reality that the best animated films establish and then commit to completely, and Madagascar 3 does it with such confidence that you just accept it and move on. The film never pauses to explain why nobody finds any of this strange, and it doesn't need to. The internal logic is consistent, the comedy works, and trying to overthink it would just spoil the fun. The circus setting actually fits perfectly into this world-building framework, because a traveling circus is one of those places where extraordinary things are expected to happen. Of course, the animals in this circus are capable of human-level communication and planning. They're circus animals, and in this world, that's just how things work. The film uses this logic brilliantly in the scene where the circus animals discuss their situation with Alex and his friends. They're having a completely rational, strategic conversation about business decisions and artistic vision, and it feels completely natural within the established rules of this world. There's also something really interesting happening with the film's treatment of what animals want versus what humans expect from them. The tension between the zoo, where animals perform for humans according to a fixed, predetermined script, and the circus, where animals perform according to their own creative vision and passion, is actually a really thoughtful exploration of agency and self-determination, wrapped up in colorful animation and great jokes. Alex's journey from zoo animal to circus performer is, at some level, a journey from being defined by others' expectations to defining himself by his own passion and choices. That's a genuinely sophisticated theme, and the film explores it without ever getting heavy-handed or preachy about it. And speaking of themes that are more sophisticated than they initially appear, let's revisit the villain. DuBois represents something really interesting if you think about her carefully. She's a person whose passion and dedication are genuinely impressive, but who has directed them toward a completely wrong purpose. She's relentless, creative, resourceful, and committed. These are all qualities that could make someone a hero in the right context. But DuBois has chosen to apply all of these gifts to the pursuit of animals for her personal trophy collection, which makes her a villain. The film never makes this explicit. It's not that kind of movie. But there's something thought-provoking about a character who has all the qualities of a hero, but none of the values. In a weird way, DuBois and Vitali are mirror images of each other. Both are defined by their passionate commitment to something. Vitali to circus performance, DuBois to animal hunting. Both lost their way at some point. Vitaly by giving up out of fear of failure, DuBois by directing her passion toward something harmful. And while Vitaly finds his way back to something good and constructive, DuBois doubles down on her obsession to the very end. It's actually a neat thematic parallel that gives the film a little more structural sophistication than you might notice on a first viewing. Now, let's get into some of the specific comedic highlights that we haven't fully discussed yet, because there are some genuinely great moments that deserve individual attention. One of the funniest running gags in the film is the relationship between Skipper the Penguin and his Scandinavian bride, Charlene. We learn that Skipper got married in Monte Carlo to a bobblehead doll, it's implied, which is so perfectly weird and in character for Skipper that it's hard to even be surprised. And the references to this relationship that pop up throughout the film are consistently hilarious. It's exactly the kind of background joke that rewards attentive viewers, and it adds to the richness of the film's comedy without ever taking center stage and demanding too much attention. The Rico moment during the train sequence is another highlight. Rico, the penguin who communicates primarily by regurgitating random objects from somewhere inside himself, produces increasingly improbable things throughout the film, and the escalating absurdity of what Rico can apparently store inside his body is a running joke that delivers every single time. There's something fundamentally, irreducibly funny about Rico, and the film uses him perfectly. He's never overexposed, always deployed at the right moment, and his contributions to the group's problem-solving are consistently both helpful and deeply bizarre. The moment where King Julien and Sonia go on their improvised date through Rome, riding through the city at night on Sonia's motorcycle, Julien serenading her with tremendous enthusiasm, is genuinely one of the most charming sequences in the film. It's funny, but it's also kind of sweet, which is a combination that the film achieves more often than you might expect. Sacha Baron Cohen plays Julienne's romantic sincerity completely straight, which is what makes it work. If he'd played it as a joke, it would have been just another gag. By playing it as genuine romance, ridiculous, over-the-top, completely unhinged romance, but romance nonetheless, he gives the sequence a warmth that elevates it beyond simple comedy. Another moment that really stands out is when the circus is performing and things start to go wrong. The acts aren't landing, the audience is restless, and you can feel the energy of the tent turn. This sequence is really well staged because it builds tension in a genuinely effective way. Even knowing that everything is going to work out, this is a family animated film, after all, the good guys are going to be fine, the sequence manages to create real suspense. You feel the desperation of the circus animals, you feel Alex's panic as his lie is about to be exposed, and you feel the weight of what's at stake. When things turn around and the performance becomes something magical, the relief and joy hit harder because of how effectively the film built up the tension before that moment. Let's also give some appreciation to the ensemble moments in the film, the scenes where all the characters are together and bouncing off each other simultaneously. These are actually the hardest scenes to write and animate well, because you have so many strong personalities in the same space, and you need each one to feel authentic and distinct, while also contributing to the overall comedic or dramatic purpose of the scene. Madagascar 3 handles these ensemble moments really skillfully, whether it's the group planning sessions, the chaotic training sequences, or the big performance moments. Each character has something to do that feels true to who they are and contributes something meaningful to the scene. There's a really interesting contrast in the ensemble between the original four, Alex, Marty, Gloria, Melman, and the new circus additions. The original four have an ease and familiarity with each other that comes through in every scene, a shorthand and comfort that reflects their long shared history. The new circus animals are different. They have their own established dynamics with each other, their own history, their own way of communicating. Watching these two groups learn to understand and trust each other is one of the subtle pleasures of the film's middle section, and the moments where characters from both groups genuinely connect, particularly Alex and Gia, but also Marty with Stefano, who are both incurable enthusiasts, are really lovely. Something else worth highlighting is how the film handles the language and communication barrier between different animal species. It's a detail that some animated films ignore completely, but Madagascar 3 is actually fairly consistent about which animals communicate in English and which don't. Sonia the bear, for example, communicates through expression and action rather than words, which is both a practical characterization choice and a great comic device. The human characters speak, of course, but the film is thoughtful about what information they can and can't understand from the animal world. DuBois and her team are actually a really interesting example of this. DuBois clearly understands something about animals. She's made a career of tracking and catching them, but she doesn't understand them the way the film's audience does. To her, these are animals behaving in unusually complex ways. To us, they're fully realized characters with rich inner lives and detailed motivations. This gap between what DuBois perceives and what we know creates some really effective dramatic irony throughout the film, particularly in the scenes where she's closing in on our heroes, and we can see exactly how scared and desperate they are, even as she sees only the external behavior. Now, one more aspect of the film that deserves real attention is its relationship to European culture and geography. Madagascar 3 doesn't just use Europe as a pretty backdrop. It engages with European culture in ways that are both funny and surprisingly affectionate. Monte Carlo's reputation for wealth, glamour, and gambling is played to the hilt in the opening sequence. The film's journey through different European countries gives it a cosmopolitan quality that's quite unusual for an American animated film. And the choice to set a significant portion of the story around a traveling circus, a quintessentially European entertainment tradition, is genuinely inspired. The circus as a cultural institution has a long and rich history in Europe, and the film engages with that history in interesting ways. The idea that the circus is struggling, that it's seen as old-fashioned and irrelevant, reflects real pressures that traditional circus arts have faced in the modern entertainment landscape. When Alex and his friends help reinvent the circus as something creative and contemporary while still honoring its traditions, the film is making a genuinely interesting point about the relationship between tradition and innovation in art. It suggests that the answer isn't to abandon tradition for the sake of novelty, or to cling to tradition in the face of changing tastes, but to find the authentic core of what made the tradition meaningful and express that in new ways. Again, for an animated comedy about zoo animals, that's a surprisingly thoughtful artistic stance. The character of Vitali embodies this theme perfectly. His traditional circus skill, jumping through hoops, is something genuinely remarkable, genuinely worth preserving. The mistake he made wasn't trying to push his art to its limits. That's what great artists do. The mistake was letting one failure make him afraid to try anything daring ever again. When he rediscovers his skill, he doesn't abandon the traditional act. He refines and improves it, finding a solution that allows him to do what he always did, but better and more safely. He doesn't reinvent himself. He returns to himself. That's a lovely distinction that the film makes really clearly through Vitali's arc. And honestly, talking about Vitali's arc makes me think about Bryan Cranston's performance one more time, because it really is extraordinary. The scene where Vitali first confides in Alex about his backstory is played with such vulnerability and openness that it's almost startling in the context of an animated comedy. Cranston drops all of Vitali's defensive gruffness and just lets the character be sad and honest and a little lost. And it creates a genuine emotional connection between these two characters that makes everything that follows feel meaningful. Great voice acting is about exactly this: the ability to convey emotional truth through nothing but the voice, without the aid of physical presence or facial expression in real time. Cranston does it magnificently. Similarly, Jessica Chastain's performance as Gia has a quality that's worth examining more closely. Gia could have been a fairly one-dimensional character, the wise, graceful mentor who helps the hero find his way. But Chastain gives her a genuine warmth and specificity that makes her feel like a real character with her own inner life. There's a moment in the film where Gia realizes that Alex has been lying to her about being a circus animal, and the way Chastain plays Gia's reaction, the hurt, the sense of betrayal, but also the struggle to understand why Alex did what he did, is really impressive. It's a brief moment, not dwelt upon for long, but it gives the character a dimensionality that elevates the whole film. Speaking of character moments that elevate the film, let's talk about the Melman and Gloria relationship, because while it's not the central focus of Madagascar 3, it's handled with a lot of warmth and consistency. By the third film, these two are in a settled, happy relationship, and the film treats that relationship with genuine affection. They support each other, they're clearly deeply comfortable with each other, and their scenes together have a lovely, easy warmth that reflects a mature and secure partnership. It's actually rather unusual in animated films to see a romantic relationship depicted at this stage. Usually animated romances are about the beginning, the chase, the declaration of love. Showing Melman and Gloria as a happy, established couple and making that feel genuinely sweet rather than boring is actually a nice piece of storytelling. Now let's circle back to something that we touched on earlier but didn't fully explore: the film's ending, and specifically the choice Alex makes. Because this choice is actually more complex than it might appear on first viewing. Alex grew up in the Central Park Zoo. It was his home, his identity, his whole world for most of his life. Getting back to the zoo was the stated goal of the entire Madagascar trilogy. It's the reason all of these adventures happened in the first place. So when Alex finally makes it back to the zoo and then chooses to leave again to join the circus, that's a genuinely significant narrative moment. It's not just a happy ending. It's a character making a mature, considered choice to leave behind the life he thought he wanted in favor of the life he's discovered he actually needs. And here's what's really smart about how the film handles this. It doesn't make the zoo seem bad or wrong. The zoo isn't depicted as a prison or a miserable place in Madagascar 3. It's comfortable, it's familiar, it's safe. But it's also not quite right for who Alex has become through his adventures. The zoo represents the life Alex was assigned rather than the life he chose, and choosing the circus over the zoo is Alex claiming agency over his own story for the first time. That's a powerful theme for both kids and adults, and the film handles it with real emotional intelligence. The way the other three react to Alex's moment of realization is also really well handled. Marty, Gloria, and Melman don't need to have the same dramatic moment of realization. Their journey is shown more quickly, but it's implied that they all feel the same way. The four of them have been through so much together that their bond has become their true home, and wherever that bond exists, whether in the zoo in Africa or with a traveling European circus, that's where they belong. It's a genuinely moving conclusion to 3 films worth of character development, and it earns every bit of its emotional impact. Let me also say something about the music choices throughout the film that we haven't quite done full justice to yet. The decision to use established pop songs alongside the original score is one that animated films have used with varying degrees of success. Sometimes it feels forced and commercial, other times it feels inspired. In Madagascar 3, the music choices are almost uniformly inspired. The use of Non je ne regrette rien for DuBois is perfect not just because it's funny, but because the song's lyrics, which translate roughly as "No, I regret nothing," are completely in character for this absolutely unhinged and utterly committed villain. DuBois regrets nothing. She has pursued animals across international borders. She has destroyed half of Monte Carlo. She has basically declared war on a group of zoo animals. And she regrets absolutely none of it. The song is funny, but it's also characterization. Firework works for the opposite reason, where Non je ne regrette rien is funny because it matches DuBois's character so perfectly. Firework works because it transcends the moment it's in. The song's message, about discovering your own light, about being something spectacular, about not hiding what makes you remarkable, is exactly what the circus performance sequence is about thematically. Alex and his friends aren't just putting on a show, they're revealing who they truly are, expressing something genuine and powerful through the medium of circus performance. Firework captures that perfectly, and the combination of the song and the animation creates one of those rare moments in animated cinema where you feel like you're watching something genuinely, transcendently joyful. And then there's the Afro Circus polka mashup, which is comedy of a completely different kind. This is pure, absurdist earworm humor, a song that is deliberately repetitive and slightly maddening, used as a running joke throughout the film. What makes it work is the film's self-awareness about how annoying and catchy it is. The other characters' reactions to Marty singing it are often funnier than the song itself. And of course, the fact that it became a genuine internet sensation before the film even came out only added to the joke. By the time audiences saw the film in theaters, many of them were already partially obsessed with this ridiculous song, which meant the film's use of it as a running gag hit even harder. One last thing I want to highlight before we really do wrap things up, and yes, I know I said that before, but this time I mean it, is the film's treatment of failure and second chances. This is a theme that runs through basically every character arc in the movie, and it's worth recognizing how consistently and thoughtfully the film explores it. Vitali's arc is the most obvious version of this theme, but it's present everywhere. The circus itself is failing and gets a second chance through the arrival of our heroes. Alex's performance as a circus animal starts badly, but gets a second chance when he embraces genuine creativity. Even DuBois, in her own twisted way, represents someone who refuses to accept failure. She just applies that refusal in the wrong direction. The film's message about failure is actually quite sophisticated. It doesn't say that failure is fine or that you should just accept it. It says that failure is something you can learn from and come back from, and that the fear of failure is more dangerous than failure itself. Vitali's problem wasn't that he failed once, it was that he let that failure convince him never to risk anything again. The difference between a character who learns from failure and one who is destroyed by it is whether they can find the courage to try again. And the film celebrates that courage in every character arc it develops. For kids watching this movie, that's actually a really valuable message. Kids fail at things all the time. They're learning everything from scratch, so of course they do. The idea that failure is temporary, that it doesn't define you, that the right response to failure is to learn from it and find a better way to try again. These are ideas that can genuinely help a young viewer navigate the challenges of growing up. And the film delivers these ideas not through lectures or moralizing, but through the story and the characters, which is exactly how great storytelling works. For adult viewers, the same theme resonates differently, but no less powerfully. Adults know about failure in ways that kids don't yet. They've experienced setbacks, disappointments, things not working out the way they planned. The sight of Vitaly rediscovering his courage and leaping through that tiny hoop hits differently when you've had your own moments of wondering whether you still have what it takes. That's the magic of great family entertainment. It speaks to everyone in the audience, but it speaks to different people in different ways, all at the same time. And look, at the end of the day, that's what Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, is. It's a film that works on multiple levels, for multiple audiences, in multiple ways. It's funny, and it's beautiful, and it's exciting, and it's surprisingly moving, and it does all of those things without ever losing sight of what it fundamentally is: a joyful, energetic, enormously entertaining animated adventure about a group of animals who just want to find their place in the world. That's a story as old as storytelling itself, and Madagascar 3 tells it with tremendous skill and heart. So there you have it. The most comprehensive breakdown of Madagascar 3, Europe's Most Wanted, that you're probably going to find anywhere on this platform. We went deep, we went wide, we covered the characters and the themes and the animation and the music and the comedy and the voice performances and the emotional arcs and the production history and the cultural context, and we had a pretty great time doing it, if I do say so myself. This is the kind of movie that rewards attention and rewards rewatching, and hopefully this breakdown has given you some new ways to think about it the next time you sit down with it. Now get out of here and go watch some great animation. You've earned it. Probably going to find anywhere on this platform. We went deep, we went wide, we covered the characters and the themes and the animation and the music and the comedy and the voice performances and the emotional arcs and the production history and the cultural context, and we had a pretty great time doing it, if I do say so myself. This is the kind of movie that rewards attention and rewards rewatching, and hopefully this breakdown has given you some new ways to think about it the next time you sit down with it. Now get out of here and go watch some great animation. You've earned it.